Guten Tag. My name is Yoichi Hagio, and
Tomoyuki Kyuna, and
now
we are happy to be here, and the honor is for more than we deserve. So we think our topic is somewhat unique in here. So I hope you'll enjoy it.
now let us start the presentation. Our presentation theme is authenticity and preservation of cultural heritage. As you know, authenticity is generally defined in a dictionary as the quality of being genuine or true.
In this presentation, we will focus on three topics. First, we will outline the present international system of protection of cultural heritage. And second, we will explain about the reason why authenticity is attracting attention in the context of preservation of cultural heritage. And third, we will explain about the notion of authenticity in the context of cultural heritage.
The main point of our presentation is that now it's time to reconsider the purpose we preserve cultural heritage, and this problem is extremely related to the concept of authenticity.
And now we are going to explain about the outline of the international system of protection, heritage protection. In 1972, the Convention concerning the protection of world cultural and natural heritage was adopted at UNESCO meeting to create a system to protect cultural and natural heritage from the threat of damage and destruction. In the convention, treaty parties promised to cooperate and aid each other in the preservation of the heritage. Initially, 20 state parties joined this convention, and now the 190 state parties are members.
In addition, the parties decided to establish the World Heritage List. If each country would like to register in the World Heritage List, they have to submit a recommendation of the cultural heritage to the World Heritage Committee. The World Heritage Committee examines properties and decides whether they are registered or not once a year. Now, let us explain the reasons why authenticity is attracting attention in the context of the preservation of cultural heritage. The problem of authenticity is especially related to the World Heritage List that I explained just before.
The World Heritage Committee, the main body in charge of implementation of the convention, has developed precise criteria for the inscription of properties on the World Heritage List. These criteria are included in the operational guideline. The operational guideline that states that it is necessary to satisfy authenticity as criteria for inscription on the World Heritage List. In other words, it is necessary to prove authenticity of heritage in order for heritage to be eligible for protection. When we government recommend their country's cultural property to the World Heritage Committee, they should refer to the operational guideline in making a document for application.
We have explained the issue related to the operational guidelines. However, actually, there were some controversies surrounding the notion of authenticity before the conclusion of the in 1972.
In 1964, an international charter for the conservation and restoration of monuments and sites named the Venice Charter was adopted. It included guidelines for the conservation and restoration of old buildings.
This is the point of Article 9 of the Venice Charter. It states that it is needed to respect the original material and authentic documents and prohibits reconstruction without reliable evidence. The Venice Charter was most influential document as the standard for maintaining authenticity when restoration was done at that time.
In the following, we will think about the authenticity of preservation and the issue of restoration of old buildings in particular. Now, we would like to consider the authenticity concept and the method of restoration by comparing Japanese architecture and European architecture. There are many differences of restoration method between them given different cultural contexts.
First of all, let's think about the principles of restoration in Europe. Originally, in Europe, it was considered to be ideal to repair on a regular basis the original structure without doing anything that is unnecessary.
In European countries, the properties of building are mainly brick and stone, right? These properties need not be repaired by separating the constituent parts, because even if the properties are ruined, the structure itself will be maintained.
In addition, restoration work must be kept to a minimum, which is based on the status quo. In other words, material authenticity is regarded as the most important thing. We should not intervene in the healthy part of a particular construction. The missing portion of the wall will have to be compensated by piling up the original stone around the remains. This method is called anastomosis, and new materials can be used only on the lost parts. Now, let's consider the situation in Japan.
Horyuji Temple is one of the most famous buildings in Japan, and Nara Prefecture is here. This is located between Fukuoka and Fukushima. Horyuji Temple has a history of about 1300 years, and it is said to be the oldest wooden building in the world. And in 1993, UNESCO registered this building as World Cultural Heritage. But this registration process went through the significant change about the concept of authenticity.
Traditional architecture in Western countries is usually constructed from stone or brick. However, Asian traditional buildings, such as those in Japan, are mostly made with wood. A stone building is relatively resistant to deterioration by wind or rain and can maintain its structure for a long time. On the other hand, wooden buildings cannot escape from natural deterioration over time and need to be restored on a regular basis in order to keep their structure.
Horyuji Temple has experienced several restorations throughout its history. Before the registration of Horyuji Temple, a principle of building preservation was minimum intervention under the Venice Charter. minimum intervention is, in other words, that it should minimize interfering with the original structure when we restore it. This principle shows that the original materials are central when we consider the issue of its authenticity.
Nevertheless, as mentioned before, we cannot preserve the original materials of wooden buildings for a long time without restoration. Stone buildings can be ruined without restoration, but wooden ones will be collapsed completely without replace rotten wood to new one.
And for example, the pillar of wooden building are going to rot away, and these pillars can't support their entire structure, so it needs to graft new parts. Under the framework of the Venice Charter, we can't attain the authenticity of wooden building in Asian countries. So wooden traditional building that went through restoration war, generally speaking, not registered as World Heritage.
That is to say, if the original materials are subject to a judgment of authenticity, this is a framework that is biased favor of European countries. Under the framework, the number of World Heritage is unbalanced between the cultural regions with the traditional stone buildings and other cultural regions.
But this principle seems to be contrary to the UNESCO's self-proclaimed ideal of cultivating cultural diversity. Returning to the subject of Horiji Temple, its restorations are characteristic of wooden building and also specific to only Japan. Materials which is used to restore cultural property, such as timbers or paints, have been handed down since its foundation. Architectural techniques are also the same as foundation. This information transmitted throughout generation had credibility because there are documents dating back to its construction.
Moreover, we should pay attention to the specific technique of restoration called deassemble restoration. This means that first the structures are dismantled in pieces and then renewed in the spot that needs repairing. And finally, this restructuring work is carried out. This method was considered as reconstruction in the Venice Charter and not restoration. And because this charter did not support the specific restoration techniques involving wooden buildings.
And now, NARA conference on authenticity was held in 1994 in Japan, and the concept of authenticity was reconsidered and reinterpreted. Under the NARA document adopted in this conference, judgment reference concerned with authenticity of cultural property have been extended.
For example, when we figure an existence of the property's authenticity, we should focus not only on tangible elements like material, but also on intangible ones like tradition and techniques and spirit and feeling.
As a result of this extension, many wooden traditional property in non-Western traditional countries can be registered as World Heritage. The NARA document had an impact on the way of preserving cultural property worldwide. This document got a positive evaluation in terms of accepting cultural diversity and changing conventional thought regarding the Western model.
And yet, there are still difficult cases under the concept of the narrow document. Don, which is a fortress structure in Bhutan, it has long history dating from the 17th century, but Don has restored without any credible or truthful information, such as documents. This information is required in the narrow document.
The reason why is explained by the viewpoint of Buddhism. Buddhist thinker believes that there is no value in tangible things and no reason to preserve all things. So they want to build new one instead of the restoration.
And this case even doesn't have an authenticity under the narrow document. The next problem we should think is the way we can understand the value of cultural properties under these particular circumstances.
And nowadays, we still confront many problems about authenticity. Thanks to the narrow document, traditional wooden building can now be registered as World Heritage. But even now, we have extreme cases like Dome, and we should think carefully about the authenticity in such a case.
Actually, the concept of authenticity is being extended, and we have to think about how the concept of authenticity will be in the future. It is important to respect for each other country's culture.
However, if the notion of authenticity includes the Dome case, the meaning of authenticity are keeping the original condition as much as possible will probably be lost. We have no reason to request authenticity when we registered as World Heritage, and in connection with this, we should sincerely reconsider what the preservation of heritage actually entails.
And finally, we'll pose two questions. And first, how should we reconsider the authenticity? We think that the concept of authenticity depends on our thinking that what is authenticity or what is genuine to some extent.
And what should be focused on when we preserve cultural heritage? This question is now discussed in UNESCO, and there is no answer to this. So the important thing we think that is that everyone has some opinions about these ongoing problems, and there is a broad debate on these issues in order to arrive at a common understanding in the international community. Thank you for your listening.